All right, welcome back. We are MDEV1004, that's Mobile APIs and Frameworks, in the summer 2024 semester at Georgian, and it's week 11, part 2 of our broadcast. And in the last part, we managed to, puttering around, able to figure out how the basic Stripe interface works with the code, the sample code that we've put together. All right, so let's try this out. So the next part is the iOS part, and what I've done is I've given you two pieces up here on Blackboard. One of them is the Stripe package for iOS, what we're going to need, and also the Stripe checkout iOS. This is kind of a view controller, so this is what I want to use for today. So I'm going to go there, and you're going to see that it gives. I've kind of provided the storyboard. This is what the storyboard would look like, and this is what I want to kind of create here. For today. So very, very simple. Instead of you recreating it, your work is going to be in Android. This work, I'm going to show you the example in iOS. Okay. So without further ado, let's go back to our Mac. And here's my Mac here. And let's do a full screen again, and I'll come back to that. But first, let's create the project. So I'm just going to minify this. We're going to keep this up, and we need this because for the most part, if you think about it, VS Code is running our server right now. We don't have a server online. We just have something here, and we want to be able to do the same thing with Xcode. So back to Xcode. I want to make a brand new project, right? So this way, instead of copying the last one like we did, there's a lot of detail that we had before, and I really don't want to kind of recreate the wheel on that one, right? So one day when Xcode feels like running. There we go. And so let's make a brand new project. There we go. And then I'm going to make an app. Click Next. And this app is going to be called ICE10 iOS. That's the app. Yes, we need a storyboard and Swift, and it's going to be the organization is going to be the same, and it's going to be my team. Click Next. Again, you would do things differently for you. And then I'm going to navigate into Georgian and into ICEs, and this is where it's going to go here in ICE10 iOS. I'm going to create that. That's the folder that I want to create in. So create there. There it is. And then it's going to create a basic interface for me in a second. So again, what it gives me is this main storyboard that's empty, right? So what I want to do now, like we've done in the past, is let it finish its dance. Let it finish doing its business, right? And why? Because as soon as it's ready, there it is, it's ready. Now I'm going to close it off. Now I'm going to close this off, and I'm going to bring it into VS Code and modify it. Right now, for VS Code, just temporarily, I'm just going to stop the server. We know that it's working, and I'm just going to kind of go into my Finder and drag in ICE10 iOS. So this is the one. And of course, what we're going to have is, we're not going to make a lot of changes here. What we do want is going to go into the base lproj and go into main storyboard. And I want to replace the scene, right? So there's scenes. I don't have to replace everything from my gist that I provided, but just this scene here, right, with a scene ID. I want to replace this scene, right here, with the scene that I made. Now notice what it says here. One thing to note is the project name is view controller. It says custom provider, right, and all that kind of stuff. That is the scene, and it gives us basically nothing. It doesn't do anything really for us. There's no connections. That's just kind of what it looks like, right? By the way, you can do all of this in Xcode as well. I just find doing it here a lot easier. All right, and that's why I'm doing it here as opposed to within Xcode. I could replace everything, in fact, like the entire storyboard, if I really want to as well. Right? So that is not necessarily a bad thing. But let's take a look what I gave you in your gist. So again, if I go to gists for me, gist.github.com, and if I look at my Stripe checkout, that's the one I just made, I can take this entire thing. So if I want to, I can take everything. So grab all that, copy it, and go back to VS Code here, and then select all and paste it in. I could do that, right? a couple of things that this thing has that the previous version that we don't have is the scene ID changed clearly, right? That's okay. This doesn't matter. Like Xcode doesn't really care about that. The custom module is ICE10 iOS. That's what we're calling it, right? Because that's what I want it to be called, which is totally fine. It needs the view controller, so that's what it needs. So scene member ID is the view controller. We need to have a view controller that is running. View controller itself is the storyboard identifier, right? Title is view controller. So it's a very basic view controller we're going to need, which is good. All right, that's what we need. So let's save that. Save, and then let's relaunch. Xcode. So I'm just going to grab that, and I'm going to go back to Xcode, and I'm going to go back to ICE10 iOS and double click. It's going to bring up that storyboard for us, and what we're hoping is that you're going to be able to see this. Yay, look at that, right? And it's a very simple cart. So what I want for in-class exercise 10 Android, right, is I want you to duplicate this very simple interface. Now, I want to talk about this. Cart and hot dog and all these things, they're just nothing. They're literally just images. So you can get some stock images here, as an example, and just put it in so it looks just like this. So the interface that you'd make with Android is like super easy. The interface is not bad at all. It's not the interface I care so much about. It's the other stuff, which is, well, the checkout button. We need to figure out the checkout button, because right now the checkout button, if we look at the connections, the references, it says checkout, right? That's what it looks like right now, and it's checkout complete. That's what the checkout button looks like. Okay. So let's uncheck this just to make sure that there's no reference anymore, and we'll come back to this in a second, and we'll perhaps fix this problem, right, that we just had. So I just unchecked. I went to the event tab. That's all the connections inspector, and I just disconnected this because we really don't have anything in our view controller.swift right now. Okay, that's what we have right now. I'm just going to kill all this stuff, and what we want to do here is kind of something that we already had from the PowerPoint. But we can't do anything in here at all until we use the package from the Swift Package Manager. Notice here we don't have any additional packages. And without the Swift Package Manager, this would be bad. So let's go into File, and notice that there is a Add Package Dependencies object here. Right? This is a new thing for some of you, I'm sure. If I click on Add Package Dependency, it basically says, hey, these are the things that it's built in. Here's the Apple Swift packages. There's 12. And then there's recently used, and there's this one. I'm not going to choose this one. I'm going to show you how to pick it, okay, from our online source. Back to our. I'm just going to exit full screen. Back to here for Blackboard, you can see that I also gave you the Stripe package for iOS link. So that's what this is. If I click onto that, it's going to take us to the developer documentation. And so under development docs, that's what this is, docs.stripe. There on the left where it says accept a payment, I'm taking us into build a payments integration. And down in there are different options here. One of them, which is the one we care about today, is iOS, right? And it basically says, hey, look, this is kind of a simple thing. When we press the checkout button, we they inject this little piece here that we're going to see, okay? So what do I want? It says you can do this with Gem, right? Or you can use something called the Swift Package Manager. By the way, you can also do it in CocoaPods, but nowadays, I'll tell you, CocoaPods was a terrible way of doing stuff, and I think the Swift Package Manager is by far better than what we had. And what this does is we need this piece. So SPM, this part. So you want to grab this, because you've never done it before, you want to grab this link right here. So I'm going to copy that link. And then if I go back to my Mac side, it's this, right? But the way you get this is you put this inside here. So you kind of paste it in. And then what it's going to do is it's going to find, right? If you press enter, it's going to find this is going to put that in here and just type it in. It's going to find the Stripe iOS SPM, right? Which is basically what I'm doing here. I want to add this to my package dependencies. So that's what you're gonna do. So put it up here, you're gonna search for it, for all the sources, found one result, and then we're gonna click on add package. And what it's gonna do is gonna download the package from, let's add those in, from Stripe, and this is the latest version. And notice that it has package dependencies now, similar to what we've done with NPM. So that's kind of cool. So we need that first, because if we don't have Stripe, we really don't have anything. That's the reality. Okay, so that's what we need there. Okay, very good. So let's get back to putting the code in now. So that's the next part. And for the next part, which is kind of neat, right? We have some things to do in terms of using some import statements here that we didn't have before. We didn't need those, right? So, and again, this is ICE 10 iOS is what we're working on. And so let's take a look at how this is going to play out. So in the view controller, like we have here, we're going to, let's go to the top, we're going to import. And if you look at what we have, if I start typing Stripe, then we want to do Stripe payment sheet. So Stripe payment sheet is what I want, right? And Stripe payment sheet allows me to put that in there. Now that's what it was before, last year, Stripe payment sheet, right? This year, it's something else, right? So Stripe, and if I go Stripe payments, right, there's also Stripe payment UI. So it could be both. I'm just going to put Stripe payments, and let's just also do import Stripe payment UI. I don't know which one it's going to be, so we're gonna look up the documentation for this in a second. And it says required module for Stripe payments is Stripe 3D S2. So this is for this one. Maybe all I need is this one, and let's see if it's going to give me a missing module. And it doesn't. So it looks like the new payment sheet module is the Stripe payments UI. By the way, if you ever have a kind of a question on what this might be, right? Well, let's go back to this. And you can see that if for iOS, which is what we're doing, right? And if we follow the documentation here, then it's going to have some examples of how do I collect payments. And so here, look, they even have Stripe payment sheet here on the documentation. All right, and even though I added in the Stripe SPM, right? I did this exact same thing, and I was right. Stripe payment sheet. As an example, and let's see if that's going to give us a big issue. We may have to look it up. Okay. Again, I'm not really that concerned because we're going to figure it out. All right. So here's our checkout button. This is kind of what we want to do. We want to make a weak outlet. This is almost exactly the code we need to make this work. Okay. So this is right on Stripe. Okay, with the latest version. All right. So let's go back to our PowerPoint, and we'll do a couple things actually. So payment sheet, it says, is payment sheet. Now that's of type payment sheet. Let's see if we can still do that, because Stripe payment sheet is here. Maybe it'll give us some code hinting for this as well. And otherwise, we're going to have to look it up. So that's the documentation as it stands online. So back to Mac, and I want to do the same thing. So let's just make it mine. So again, what I want to do is I want to give the ability for us to, for the UI button, so I'm going to say @IB outlet, right? So this is how we're going to do. We're going to do the button a little differently this time. We're going to make it a weak variable, and we're going to call this the checkout button. And we're going to make a reference to it's of type UI button. Okay, so that's the first thing. So notice that there's a little, kind of open circle here. That means there's no connection. And let's go back to the storyboard and make that connection. So again, we're going to use the assistant editor. There we go. And all we want to do is we want to control drag from here to here, and then we can make that connection. Now this is valid. Now it's actually connecting to something that we have. Okay, pretty cool. And we can close off the assistant editor here. There we go. Assistant editor closed. Awesome. Next, now that we know the button is connected, the next part is continuing with our code example. Okay. So again, just following the example that we've got online, let's see if we're going to continue with this. We're going to say var payment sheet, again, this is going right from our documentation online, which is of type payment sheet. Okay, so still okay with this. It's just the UI, the interface, the import changed. That's all that changed. Yay, awesome. And then we're going to say let backend checkout URL equal to a new URL that we need, which one is it going to be, my friends? A string, which is going to be what we had before, which is we're going to use the local URL, http://localhost 3000. Again, we may replace this next week with a real API that we're going to put up. And payment, we're not going to make a base URL. We're just going to use this. All right, so that's going to be directly to the URL that we need. Okay. Next, in our override function, we can get rid of some of this in our view did load. What we want, sorry, let me just make sure that we're maximized here. What we want, we don't want to get rid of our view, super view did load. We wanted to, I was just trying to make it nicer. There we go. We don't need this comments. Get rid of the comments, right? What I want to do now is continue with our checkout button. So we're going to say something like checkout button. And we want to, instead of the way we've done checkout buttons before, or any button before, where we connected it to an IB action, right? This is where this is going to be slightly different. So before we connect it, we're going to connect it a different way. We're going to say that we're going to use Objective-C for this one. So we're going to say at Objective-C, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a function that is did tap checkout button. That's the function name. This is neat because what we can do with it is we can point to this function, as an example, for the payment sheet. So back to here, the function's empty right now. Well, the way it's going to work is we're going to say something like, hey, checkout button. I'm going to make a reference. This is the way to make a reference manually here, right? So we're going to say, hey, checkout button. I want you to add a target, right? And the target is going to be something that we're going to use. So I'm going to say target, again, where you're going to use self as the source. And the action is going to be a new selector. This is kind of neat the way this works. So here's the selector. And we're going to say did tap checkout button. Did tap checkout button. All right, so that's how it's going to look. And then what we're going to say is for touch up inside. So this is kind of the same idea of making the checkout button, kind of work by touching it. And we're going to say that by default, the checkout button dot is enabled is equal to false. All right, so why is that? Because we don't want to be able to have the user click the checkout button until, as an example, they're ready to, until the payment gateway is ready, okay, as an example. So the payment gateway has to give us information, and then we're ready to check out, kind of thing. All right, so next, so that's the first part. So then that whole function, that fetch payment intent, which came from our PowerPoint document, is right here, fetch payment intent. Let's grab this. Again, this is example code that we're just fetching from the documentation. Again, I just want to show you this. I'm going to say copy this. Let's try that again. So we're going to copy. We're going to switch back to here, and I'm just going to paste in that function. So paste. Let's go through it. So the fetch payment intent function, right, what this does is it sets up a URL request with the backend checkout URL. The backend checkout URL is this one that we're going to run. We need to run our little localhost server to make this work. The request type is going to be a post request. And then we've seen this last week, which is, hey, let's make a new task. I'm just going to minify this. And we're using a completion handler here. This is the completion handler that goes basically all the way down to here again. And right to there. And that what we're basically saying is, hey, in the completion handler, let's use guard let. Hey, do I have data? Am I getting data back? If I have data, then let JSON do, let's deserialize the JSON object. And the JSON object we're going to deserialize is get that data. There's going to be two pieces that we need, the client secret and the publishable key. We get these pieces of information from the data we're going to get back. And then here's where we would handle any errors. Okay, we're not handling any errors right now. Now this is the call. So the API call, basically the Stripe, that's what this is, Stripe STP, API client, shared publishable key is equal to the publishable key that we're going to get back from the API, our API that we just built, like in Node.js as an example, right? And then we're going to set up a configuration where we use the payment sheet. We instantiate an object of payment sheet configuration. Okay, that's what we're doing. And the configuration, we're going to kind of set up the merchant display name. You can put another display name here yourself. The default billing details, which for me, the country is Canada. That's what we're going to do. The configure allows delayed payment methods. We're going to say is true. Yes, we do. And then we're going to say the payment sheet is a new payment sheet. So this instantiate an object of type payment sheet, where we pass in the client secret and the configuration. So once we've configured everything, we pass it in and we instantiate an object of type payment sheet. And then once we're able to do this, then and only then, it's an async function. So basically we're waiting for the payment gateway to get back to us with a positive response. And when we do, we enable the checkout button. That's what we're going to do. Okay? So that's what this does. That's what the fetch payment intent does. Okay? So when is this called? Well, we're going to call it in viewDidLoad. So viewDidLoad is going to set up, the connection to the, to our API, and it's going to set up the connection. We're going to wait for data to come back from our payment gateway, right? So once we have a connection with the payment gateway and our API, then and only then can we do the checkout. Okay, that's the checkout piece that we're going to kind of create. So what does the checkout piece do? Well, when I tapped the checkout button, this is the next piece. What do I want to do here? Well, here is the beautiful thing. I want to say, hey, payment sheet. I want to now present the payment sheet, right? From self, right? And the payment sheet is basically going to be a little completion where we're going to get the payment result in, right? And we're going to get, when we get the payment result, we're going to create a switch statement with the payment result here. And depending on what we get back, so here's the switch. Let's put that in my nice way of doing things like this. So there's a couple cases. So case, let's actually type switch. How about that? That was the error that I just got. Switch. Case, the first case is if the payment was completed. If we've got a completed payment, then what do I want to do? I want to print your order is confirmed, right? And we'd also maybe send the client to a confirmation screen or something like that. Here's a second case. If it's canceled, right? If it's canceled, that is an issue, right? We might say something like canceled, okay? And what about if it failed, right? Then let error, in case it failed, we're going to let the error print. And why did it fail? We'll say payment failed for whatever reason, and we're going to type in the error or display the error in the console. We want to have this even for us for our things that we want to do. And that is my did tap checkout. Okay, so let's go through this one more time, which is, it's kind of weird because maybe you've never seen this kind of connection before. This is the thing that messes people up the most. They're like, wait, that's how you make an IB action? It's not really. You make a reference to the button itself, and then what you're doing is you're going to make a manual connection. The manual connection is this thing right here. This creates a manual connection. So we're say manually connect to the button handler, right? That's what this is. And the handler is really this one, did tap checkout button. That is the selector. We're basically saying, when we do this, do the action that's connected to this did tap checkout button function, right? And the type of action is going to be touch up inside. Touch up inside is when I touch on the inside of the button. Okay, that's what it's doing. Again, it's kind of a weird name that they have here, but that's how it works. And that is, for the most part, our code. Now it comes down to testing. How do we test this thing out to make sure that it all works? Well, we need to run our API again. So back to our code. I'm just going to go back to our recent folders, which is our API. That's kind of what we ran before. And I need to run this now. So back to this. Let's just run tsc minus v. We don't need to, but I'm going to do it anyway. tsc minus w. There we go. So that any kind of compilation errors will come up. And then nodemon. Right, so we know that the server is running. And now, back to this, we want to test this, right, inside of, using the storyboard. Storyboard is pointing to an iPhone 15 Pro. We're going to point it to an iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is what we have, I think, open right now in the simulator. That's what the simulator has open. And then what we want to do is just run it and see if we've got a connection. So let's see so it failed. Okay, so this is some stuff. All right, so it says no such module, Stripe payment UI. No such module. So that's new. Again, this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with, and it's an issue, right? Because, well, let's go back to this, and if we go to this, here's Stripe, and these are the things that we have. There's Stripe Payments UI, right there, Stripe Payments UI, right? And that is built in with everything we need. Why would this be a problem? Let's do a build. Did I type it right? I mean, it even came up, which is weird, right? So there's the project. Just going to make sure that let's do a build one more time. Yeah, no such. What did it give me? Package, find packages, features disabled. Find packages, feature disabled. Oh. Look that up. Right. So feature disabled meaning that we don't have access to an API, right? That's what it means. And let me just check a couple things here. So we added package dependencies. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not totally Xcode settings. Sign in again for my Apple ID. Sure, maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe. I don't think that's it, but. And then what do we need? Bindings, general. I don't think it's anything there. And I don't think it's that. I don't think if I was to run this thing, it's going to be anything different. Build's not going to fail because of that. Default location. Let's go to advanced. Okay, yeah. That's project settings. Let me go back to my manifest. Okay, so I don't need Apple Vision, I don't need Mac, I don't need iPad. I don't care about those things. And then, do I do signing and capabilities? Perhaps this is it. Automatic signing. Let's look at the API docs. So get started. Make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong. Lots of stuff to check, my friends. But we will fix this problem. Problems are good. Problems test us. All right, so that's kind of what we did. Stripe payment sheet. We did all this. I just kind of really did my own thing using this kind of thing. Let's just make sure that we didn't do anything wrong further up. Okay, view your payment method statement. Add packages, select the latest version, release this page. Add the Stripe payment sheet product target of your app. You don't need to use gem file. Add an endpoint. We did all that stuff. Add a customer. We checked all those things. Client secret, publishable key. Test a running implementation on this glitch. Collect payment details. This is all the same. All I did was I made our own company name and stuff like that, and we did change these things, so that's why we did that. That's the same. We set up a return URL if we need it. We don't need this right now in the scene delegate. Customer may go out of your app to authenticate, for example, in Safari or the backing. To allow them to automatically return to your app, in your scene delegate, do this. In your app delegate, application Stripe handled. And we're not using Swift UI. So let's check my stuff out. Let's see if I missed something on my end. But again, wonderful. I love having errors like this. It is good because it basically pushes us to do different things. Nothing in my app delegate in my notes. And what about my scene delegate? Nope. Didn't need this before. What could be the problem with my info P list? I don't see anything there either. Base project. I love when things change. Let's make sure that I haven't typed anything wrong. Sorry guys, just checking my notes, making sure that everything is the same, because I don't want to tell you something that's working and it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully you do. Well, the way to check this to make sure is to run my previous version. So let's do that. And this is for on my end, guys, not your end. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not completely non-functional, right? But what I've done is I'm just going to, because I don't see any signing capabilities at all. Like that would be in my info P list, which enable multiple windows. Package.swift. I don't think there's anything else. Signing and capabilities. Well, yeah, so let's check my previous project out, which is always a good thing to do. So I'm going to go into open existing project, and I'm going to go into last year's module and see what happened. I don't normally do this, but hey, I want to solve a problem. So let's open that up and see if that connects and does anything differently. There you go. So this is the same stuff. The version is older, and the code is Stripe payment sheet because that's what it used to be, right? But that's using the old code. And I'm just going to see if my info P list is different somehow. Nope. And then if I go here to signing and capabilities, I don't see anything. Well, let's see if this, okay, so this is interesting. Frameworks and libraries in this, payments UI, Stripe payment sheet. And that's inside of general, frameworks, libraries, and embedded content. Maybe something messed up with the latest version. I may have to come back here, and maybe that's what we need to do. I can check that. Let's check that out again using this. Well, look at that. That's what's missing somehow. So let's add them in. We want to kind of select all that and add it in manually. There we go. I guess I had to add those in manually, and let's just run it again and see if that is the problem. That was the problem, my friends. So you had to go into the fix for me so far was I went into general under the manifest. That's the top line here. I went to general, and then I added in the frameworks, libraries, and embedded content. It still failed. It says payment sheet in scope. Payment sheet. Cannot find payment sheet in scope. Yeah, see, doesn't understand payment sheet anymore. Doesn't understand payment sheet. So value of URL. Okay, let's do another little search. Remember, this is the new user interface, the new URI for it, which is perfectly fine. Again, love this. So let's do this. So, and even though the online documentation says what it is, it isn't. Payment sheet. It says Stripe payment sheet missing in iOS API. Okay. All right, so we're missing the payment sheet module. That's what it's basically saying. That's what I'm reading on Stack Overflow. So let's make sure. Maybe we didn't get everything. So we have Stripe, all of this stuff, but we don't have payment sheet. Wait, oh, here's Stripe payment sheet right here. Stripe payment sheet. And what about inside of, so info P list. We have Stripe payment sheet there. And this is 23.28.1. Features, Apple Pay, native UI. modules, Stripe docs, payments, accept the payment, which is what we want. Stripe.com docs, mobile, iOS, basic for integration. Okay, let's go there. So we'll copy that. Oops. We want to go in full screen. Do that again. Copy that part. This is from the latest user interface, or the latest API package from everything else. It goes, okay, basic, deprecated. We created improved payments UI. There we go. Accept a payment. So what's the difference? Yeah, did all that. But they still use payment sheet. That's pretty funny. Yeah, we're not going to do that. We don't need a return URL right now. It doesn't have payment sheet, huh? Interesting. Yeah.
We have to replace that Stripe payment UI by Stripe payment sheet on the code.
Yeah, I know, it just didn't work. But let's see.
It's working for me. Over there in line number 2. It's working for me.
Yeah, I was just working about, yeah, okay, so now it's there. Interesting. I guess because we didn't have it in, it must be unwrapped.
It might be so.
Yeah, that's what the problem. Thank you for that. No, and you know what? I was looking at it going, maybe there's something that's changed. Like, you know, I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, you know, it's one thing that can change and then everything has changed, right? So it's like, but thank you for that. Appreciate that. Let's just go back. I would have figured it out eventually, but thank you. That speeds things up. We need to put in this exclamation mark here. So sorry, that is there, and that should explicitly unwrap. That's the one thing I missed. And let's try it again. Thank you for that. And let's see if it's going to run eventually. It's launching and attaching. And I don't care about the logging system. I care about getting my user interface. There we go. Okay. So this is really interesting. So the way this works is now that we have everything, see that the checkout button is not disabled. That means it's connected to the back end. That's pretty good. So if I click checkout, and then there we go. This is the payment sheet, my friends. Take a look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So some test payment information you can put in here. So you want to put a test payment. They've given you a couple of test credit cards, which are here. Here's some test integration credit card numbers. So you can grab this one, right, 4242, this one here. And then you put this, just fill out the credit card using the credit card number with any expiration date, CVC, and postal code, anything you want. All right, so we're going to use this one, and we're going to go back to here, and we're going to put that card number in, paste, and then the month will be, I don't know, we'll say 11/27, and the CVC is like 999, and then the postal code will be M9M1C5. I'm making it up. Okay, so there's the postal code. There it is. We're in test mode, and if I click pay, then it's going to process, and if everything goes well, it's going to be a check mark. That little check mark is something that we can check out. And if I go back to our logs, and if I refresh, then let's see what happens, right? So you can see some stuff happening, right? So there's our post again. That's what happened in our post last time. Let's go back to overview and see 11 successful, right, is what we did there. And everything looks good, right? All right, so that's how it worked. I just want to make sure that we got, just Just want to make sure that we have payments. No, because we're basically doing a test. So test mode is on for this one. That's what I've kind of done. There it is. Gross volume, $9.99, which is what I did right now. And this is just right now, $12.47. And that's the current balance. And you can see that we did kind of all these things right now. Okay? So that's just happened right now at 12:47. So the payment came through. What did we see in the API, right? Because the API also can give us some information. So going back to here into VS Code, we just got this. This basically says everything is good. And what about in the in Xcode? Like what happened there? What did we get? So we get all this, right? So we did some analytics, and basically at the bottom, you know, as an example, you got your order is confirmed. Your order is confirmed means that we got to this part here in the switch case where everything has been completed. Once we did that part, then we did that in. What about canceled? How about that one? How does that work? So back to this. If I click checkout, and as an example, it says payment failed, and an error. It says payment sheet received a payment intent in a terminal state succeeded. So this is where we would have to put in a going back to the sheet page because it kind of already succeeded. Let's stop this, and let's just relaunch the app, and let's try it again. That just gave us an error. That's like we already succeeded this one. Let's check it out. So if I check out again, it comes here. But what if I want to cancel? Right. So this is what if I click this button here. If I cancel this thing, then canceled is what happens. So it actually went to this case right here, which is kind of cool. But notice this little piece right there. That user interface comes from Stripe, and that's where the beautiful part is. So my friends, this is the end of our in-class exercise 10, and 10, this is 10 iOS. Let's put this up on GitHub. So back to this, I'm going to say that let's do a git status and see where we're at. We added all this stuff in here, so we're going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say created simple iOS UI, or well, I'll say iOS test. All right, and then we'll push that up. Okay, so that's everything you need for the beginning of what we're doing. Okay, so I'm asking you to do something new. This is a new thing because, you know, normally I give you both iOS and Android. Today, what I want you to do is try and do it on your own. So using the docs. So again, I think they're not terrible. I mean, that was clearly something weird, but not terrible. What we did, if I scroll up, right, all the way to the top here, in that little link I gave you, we use iOS. For you, you need to make one for Android, right? So here's Android. So I need you to create the user interface the same way as I did with iOS. This is not difficult. There's really not a lot here, okay, to create. I don't need any of this stuff, right? I mean, it's going to be something like this, and the way to do this is basically to take the iOS user interface that I've given you, so this, right? And for the most part, do your best to recreate this as best as possible. I mean, if you're having trouble with hot dogs and salads, you can make it whatever you like. This is just examples. But for the most part, see if you can't add everything up so that the taxes and everything is $9.99, okay? Again, what you see here really doesn't matter. It's just the checkout button. that's the checkout button that's the main thing. So really, all this stuff is just a template. It's just, you know, just to show you what this might look like. So do this and make sure you have a checkout button in your user interface in Android. Then let's take a look at the steps for Android. We already have the server-side stuff. That's all good. The dependencies are right here. Implementation, comms, Stripe, Stripe Android 2040.8.1. That's what you put in your dependencies, right? And then it says view your payments methods. We already did this, but all of this has been done. We added an endpoint. All this is done. And then Server.js has been done. It's this part, right? So where we want to make it composable, right? And in the app itself, you want to create an app, a payment sheet, right? And it even gives you the code for something that looks like this. Okay, so this stuff right here is, for the most part, the very similar to what we'd be doing on the iOS side. Now you can see that there's a lot up here in terms of imports, in order for you to make this work. But really, at the end of the day, it talks about having a button. Here's the button, and when we do a click event, again, what we're doing is we're presenting the payment sheet the exact same way in Android that we did in iOS. Okay, so again, stuff that's okay to use to make this work, because I just want you to check this out. Using the documentation, you shouldn't need anything else other than this stuff here, but it's okay. If you need to use, going back to my PowerPoint, if you need to use something like ChatGPT for this to get help, to get it completed, it's okay. And I even say that here. For you to create a similar front end on the Android platform, try and make it look the same as iOS as much as possible. And I say ChatGPT is okay to use as a starting point. However, you'll find the Stripe documentation very good. And I think it is. I think it's not that bad. Demonstrate both iOS and Android for full marks. Okay, that's what I want you to do. If you only demonstrate the iOS version, I mean, you're going to lose a whole point. I'll take a whole point off, so 3 out of 4, right? So just letting you know. But you need to make it work with your stuff. Please don't just copy my code. Guys, sometimes I see some people basically giving me back my code. That's a misconduct, right? We don't want that to happen. Recreate it for yourself. You have to have your own stuff. So please do not use my keys, right? That's why I'm not sharing my .env file with you. Don't use my keys, right? Please do not use my payment gateway whatsoever. Make your own. Actually go in and sign up for Stripe and all those things. And then you'll get, if you just do the iOS part, you'll get 3 out of 4, right? How about the other way around? What if you just make the Android part and not the iOS part? 3 out of 4, okay? And like I said, ChatGPT is okay to help you start structuring stuff. And the thing that you might want to put in to help you or search is like, I want to make a similar interface to this, or similar, user interface, a similar code to make this work in my main activity. How do I do it? Kind of thing. And then it'll kind of come up with some stuff. Questions for Sudarshan, who's been very helpful today, as always, right?
Yes, Professor.
Are you all good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, thank you so much then. That's it for today. I'm going to stop recording, and then I'll see you guys a little bit short today, but we'll see you all of you next week, and we'll add more to this thing as we continue with payment gateways. Okay, thank you so much.